Well, in the near term, we have greater confidence that growth is recovering, and we've upgraded our GDP forecast not just to 3.9% this year, but also to 4% next year. And we've maintained our assessment that the longer term potential trend rate of growth of the Turkish economy is around 4.3%. So the composition and sustainability of GDP growth is particularly important for the rating. Now, some of the government reform measures are aimed at reducing the risks that these imbalances re-emerge over time. So for 2020, we expect a V-shaped recovery, with GDP growing from 0.4% last year to 3.9% this year. And that's driven by private consumption and supported by the lower interest rate, as well as a pretty sharp pickup in private bank lending, which is growing at around 25%. We also expect investment will return to growth this year of around 3%. And a bit more generally, investor sentiment has been supported by the better current account position, which has moved into a surplus of 0.2% of GDP last year. We do, however, see some near-term risks of greater volatility, for example, from geopolitical developments, and particularly from monetary policy, if interest rate cuts are too great and that puts additional pressure on the lira. In terms of opportunities from a ratings perspective, if we saw better reform progress against the government's new economy programme, that would be helpful for the rating. So, for example, if we saw pension reform to boost the savings rate. And we think the conditions for difficult reforms are better this year, given the economy's recovering and the fact we still have 3.5 years until the next scheduled elections. Large cuts in Turkish interest rates to 10.75% have taken the real interest rate, so if we take into account inflation, into negative territory of minus 1.3%, which in our view increases the risks of further market volatility. We also expect inflation to remain well above target at close to 10% at the end of this year and next year. Well, firstly, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen with the virus itself, so forming a judgment about the economic impact is hugely uncertain. Fitch has done some illustrative analysis of the potential impact on Chinese growth this year, and if the virus is contained to something around the level of the previous SARS virus, then GDP growth in China would reduce by about 0.4 percentage points, so to around 5.5% compared to a previous forecast of 5.9%. Now, the Turkish economy doesn't have a large exposure to China, but one of the lessons we learned from the last slowdown in China was that the knock-on impact to the Eurozone and to Germany in particular can be pretty significant. And overall, we don't think there's going to be a sizable impact on Turkish economic growth as a result. But this is very uncertain, and that's based on current developments. The main potential triggers of a future upgrade are greater confidence that the recent improvement in Turkey's external finances are sustainable, particularly if that's due to implementation of structural reforms, for example, to lift the savings rate or to reduce the dependence of GDP growth on credit. Alternatively, potential triggers would be a reduction in geopolitical risks,